Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's edition of HR Mentorship Learning Series. My name is Oluyemi Adeosun, and tonight we are privileged, very honored, delighted, elated, and also excited to have with us Mrs. Joanne Oben, and she'll be speaking to us on the topic HR with Impact, Building Inclusive, Strategic, and Future-Ready Organization. Ladies and gentlemen, I will just read her profile very briefly, as she will also get to introduce herself in more detail immediately she takes over. She has over 32 years of experience, cross-functional roles, multilingual, English, French, Dutch, Yoruba, Igbo. She's multilingual. She has worked in NGOs, oil and gas, manufacturing, financial services, real estate, consulting, and IT. I'd also like to say that she's a certified change manager, a certified personal coach. She has a Master's of Science in Human Resources, University of Manchester, England. She also has a certification, DIPCO Counseling, École Normale in Yaoundé, Cameroon. She has a first degree in economics, University of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. She has worked in multiple geographies: Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, Morocco, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, Austria, Netherlands, United Arab Emirates, and also India. I think I'll stop here. Again, let's welcome to speak to us today on the topic HR with Impact, Building Inclusive, Strategic, and Future-Ready Organization. Joanne Oben, Mrs. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yemi, for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. I'm Joan Oben. Like Yemi says, I am so honored to be here. My first interaction with this group, HR Mentorship, I had not had any interaction prior, and now I'm wondering why. I should have heard about your group earlier, but I hadn't. But that doesn't mean that I am not honored to be here. I'm extremely honored to be here, not just as a global HR leader, but as someone who started her journey right here in Nigeria from the University of Port Harcourt, as you heard Yemi say. So I have seen HR evolve from the back office function when I started out many years ago to the strategic force, in my view, that HR is today. And that is some of what I want to speak to you about. Why HR continues to be not just relevant in today's world, but also revolutionary as well. So that's why I picked the topic HR with Impact. When mentorship contacted me, they gave me the free hand to pick what topic I wanted to speak about, and I tried to find a topic that will be expansive and touch on as many things as possible, but especially the impact that we have in the work that we do. So before I go into what does it mean, HR with impact, I want to just very briefly dive a little bit into um, my own introduction. So can everybody see the slide? I don't think you'll respond, but I hope everybody is seeing the slide. Yemi, everybody's seeing the slide? I think so. Yemi?
Yes, we can. We are with you, ma'am.
Okay, great. So very busy slide. But I think everybody should have one of these. For me, I find it quite useful in detailing where I have been and where I am now, and also in extrapolating on what still needs to be done. So the way to read it is on the left side, the white side, and on the right side, the soft side, as I call it. So today I'm a regional HR director. Like Yemi said, I'm also a change manager and I'm also a coach. And it all started many years ago as a career counselor in 1990, I think, when I started that work up to 2025. So many years in between with a few gaps here and there. Um, I have navigated through different uh, organizations from oil and gas to manufacturing to real estate to financial services. My last role was in nonprofit, and I have also grown, worked across many, many, many geographies. I consider myself to be extremely, extremely privileged from the little girl that started out in Nigeria. I was born in Mushin, metropolis in Lagos, to the global HR leader that I am today. On the right, you'll see what I say my soft side, the soft side of me. So, um, husband, mother, my three sons who are now married, and my five grandchildren. I think you can see them there in the little corner. And also my values, my core values, my personal values, hard work, fairness, and integrity is what I was raised on. And also what it feels like to work with me. Um, in terms of lifelong learning, performing teams, and process improvements. Those are the things that I've picked up as I have worked these past years. Um, as I speak through the slides, I will call on some of my experiences to demonstrate some of the topics that we are talking about, especially my last three experiences. So you will hear about Cummins, you will hear about SOS, which is where I last worked, and you will also hear about FCMB, where I worked for almost 8 years while I was in Nigeria. So let's dive into our topic for the day. HR with impact, building inclusive, strategic, and future-ready organizations. We'll start with talking about strategic HR beyond admin because, not too long ago, HR was an admin function. And then we'll go into inclusive leadership and DEI. You'll hear a lot about DEI today because that is one of my fun topics. And then we'll talk about how inclusiveness helps to build high performing teams. You will also hear about how we measure this performance in teams. And then lastly, I will share a couple of career wisdom from my journey. And hopefully, in the question and answer session at the end, I will also get to hear from you all as well. So let's go into the topic of why HR matters today in today's world. Yeah, I've introduced myself already, so we can skip that. So why is HR still important? Is there all this talk about AI taking over our jobs in the future, but HR, in my view, continues to be relevant. Why is this? Because the world is changing. The world is changing at an alarming rate, and organizations must respond to this change and continue to change with it. We are facing all kinds of changes, global uncertainty, not to talk about the VUCA world that we've heard so much about, but global uncertainty, all kinds of crises. You watch TV and listen to the radio and the podcasts and whatever, and we all see what is going on around the world, the digital transformation, AI disruption, bringing it closer to home, to people, also mental health challenges and well-being challenges of our employees. Also from a regulation standpoint, all kinds of regulators national, international, calling for equity and inclusion and ethical leadership. There's a lot of demand on organizations to respond to all these regulations. So it makes HR relevant because HR is where values meet action, right? Where data meets dignity, where leadership begins, not necessarily with a title, but with intent. Yeah, you don't have to be a manager or senior manager or director, in my view, to have impact in human resources. So HR in the HR landscape today is no longer about payrolls and performance management and exit interviews. Is more about shaping culture and driving strategy and building inclusive institutions, inclusive underlined, inclusive institutions. So you would find if you look at any job ad, at most HR job ads, you will find a lot of ask around culture, around strategy, around transformation. So those skills and competencies are in extreme high demand in today's world. So that's where we are from an HR perspective. That is the reason why HR continues to be relevant. But I want to hear also from you. What in one word, what does HR impact mean to you? In one word, what does HR impact mean to you? Yemi, can we hear from the audience? Can they respond to that question? Maybe they can type it into somewhere. I don't know.
Yes, they can type and they can also raise their hands if
Uh-huh.
they want to speak. I'm trying to generate a poll now.
Okay. What does HR with impact mean to you? I want to hear from us.
Please confirm if you can see the poll, ma'am.
I can.
Okay.
What does HR with impact mean to you? Can everybody see it? And can they respond to it?
Please, let's view the poll, please. Or raise our hands to speak to, or we can also use the chat.
Uh-huh. Let me pull out my chat because right now I'm not seeing a chat window. Ah, there we go, chat.
Please, let's respond to the poll, please. Thank you so much.
Is it blocking the slide? Because I just opened the chat. Does it block the slide for people?
No, we can see the slides. It doesn't block it.
Okay,
So
it
Joyce has
doesn't block.
responded. Joyce said HR with impact is about making a difference. She's typed it in
Okay,
the chat.
okay. Thank you, Joyce.
Okay, so
And
I'll end the poll now. I'm sharing the results. I don't know if you can see the results, ma'am.
let's see. What does HR with impact mean to you? I see two. it doesn't show me the results. So I think two people responded. It was maybe Joyce and somebody else. Mary has her hand up. Mary, maybe it was Mary and Joy that responded to what HR impact.
Yeah, maybe you can speak. Mary, please unmute and speak. Thank you.
Sorry, I was one that responded. I don't know.
Is that Mary?
No, this Billy Kiss.
Billy Case, Billy Case. So can you just say it again, what it was you responded, because I can't see it?
Okay, I said HR impact means aligning talent with organizations' goals and objective. So you
Exactly.
make talent with your organization goals and objective. Yes.
Okay, okay. Thanks, Billy Case. Anybody else wants to share what they mean, what they understand by HR with impact?
These are good.
Akim Afolabi?
Yes, I also responded.
Okay.
Yes.
And if you just say it, maybe that would help.
Okay, ma. Okay. To me, it means leveraging on all HR value chains to achieve organizational goals.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Afolabi. So yes, so HR with impact is essentially not just doing the HR work. It means HR beyond admin. It means bringing all the resources together to have an impact in the organization. So it's no longer about compliance or contracts. It's about shaping strategy and the culture and also impact. When it's done right, in my view, it's the engine room of transformation, I think. And I will highlight it in two ways. I think I will highlight that in two ways. One, as a driver of organizational strategy, and two, in translating operational details into executive narratives. And I'll give examples like I promised I will from my world of experience. So I'll start with an example from my experience at SOS, HR as a driver of organizational strategy. In SOS, I was responsible for 30 countries, very diverse group from Europe to Middle East to Central Asia, and some also European countries. Safeguarding was a strong part of our culture in SOS. It was a driver of organizational strategy. So we had an impetus to embed safeguarding into HR systems. I don't know if safeguarding is a new word. It's very common in the non-profit world, but I also think that it's used maybe in other terms in non-profit world. Safeguarding is about creating safe environments for people, vulnerable people. For us in SOS, we worked with children, so it was about creating safe environments for children as well as for the staff that work with children. It means especially protecting people from harm, from abuse, from exploitation, from neglect. I think the equivalent of that in the corporate world, maybe in your organizations, will be the duty of care that I hear about sometimes, or compliance or ethical leadership in faith-based organizations, or in schools when they say protect students from bullying and neglect. That's also safeguarding in some form, or in social services when you talk about protecting the elderly and the mentally ill or disabled people. That's also safeguarding. So So we had an impetus in SOS to embed safeguarding in our HR systems across these 30 countries that were in my portfolio. And this is what we did in every HR process, from recruitment all the way to exit, in the form of safe recruitment, safe onboarding, performance management, learning and development, not just in policy statements, because we're very good as organizations in using a lot of policy statements or slogans to describe the kind of organizations that we are. When we say, for instance, that we are a, a nurturing organization, or we take care of our people, or we say we are a kind organization, things like that. But we have to go beyond that to actually embed that into our HR processes, and this is what we did. How did we translate that? In role descriptions, for example. So we review job descriptions of everyone to make sure that we have included safeguarding responsibilities in their job description. So everybody across all the levels of the organization had safeguarding responsibilities. We also embedded that in our um, interviewing protocol. So when we interview people, we also interview for safeguarding. Do these people demonstrate the values of our organization from an ethical point of view, for instance, and things like that? So it was also part of our interviewing protocol to assess the ethical judgment and empathy of the people that we're bringing into our organization. It was also part of our um, training protocol to make sure that everybody on entry and in the course of their career with the organization continuously were being trained on our safeguarding principles and were tested for them in performance management in our assessments. Also train managers to hire for safeguarding values, also in concrete things like code of conduct, make sure that there was zero tolerance for non-compliance with code of conduct protocol. So everybody had to sign the code of conduct, everybody had to sign safeguarding commitments on joining the organization, etc., etc. So it becomes not just what we do, but who we are as an organization. So, so safeguarding was, by so doing, completely embedded into our HR systems. Everybody who was part of the organization will feel it in the course of their career at every point of the HR value chain, the whole essence of safeguarding. And that was the point. So from my perspective, this is how HR moves from being a support function to being a strategic partner in driving the organizational strategy. So that's one. On the other hand, the second topic of translating operational details into executive narratives, I will share a moment where HR had to move fast, think strategic, and communicate with clarity. Quite often, we are very good as HR professionals, very good at digging our head in the sand, getting on with the work that we do on a daily basis, without necessarily lifting up our head to translate our operational work into an executive narrative. For me, that's where I see the gap in the work that we do. We have learned to do our work properly, to work with all the resources that we need, to use the data that we have, to operate and to be tactical in how we go about our work. However, we have not necessarily translated that into executive narratives. And I'll give an example. So in 2022, when the Ukraine conflict started, we needed as an organization to respond to that. As a humanitarian organization, that's our bread and butter. That's where some of our work comes from. So we go into this kind of emergency humanitarian situations, and we have to respond to those kind of needs. When we went into Ukraine, we were terribly, terribly ill-equipped, I have to say. Terribly ill-equipped. Our HR systems were not fully prepared. Our coordination gaps with other functions were slow, and that slowed our response. It took us maybe 2.5 months or so to adequately respond to the Ukraine crisis. But we learned from that, and we adapted those lessons to subsequent conflicts in Syria and in Palestine. What did we do differently? Some of the protocols we set up were: one, activating a cross-functional emergency team, HR, safeguarding, legal, security, programs, those are finance as well, because you need money to go into this kind of areas. So we had a cross-functional team. We knew for each team what it was that was required of them in order to respond to this situation. We had clear protocols around risk assessment, around staff protection, around ensuring that the service continues. Because when there's a conflict, then there's disruption, right? So people do not necessarily get their needs in the way that they used to because of the disruption. So how do we ensure that the service continues in spite of? So it helped. This time we had a playbook, right? We had a cross-functional team. We had a protocol around assessing the risk. When is it safe to go in? When is it not safe to go in? We had a recruitment strategy. Immediate term, short term, medium term, long term. In the immediate term, we use our own internal staff to access the situation, and then we work with close partners whom we had to identify in order to launch emergency hiring for short, medium, and long-term coverage for this kind of situations. We also built in psychosocial support for people that we are sending into danger zones. When you are sending people into this kind of environment, they need just more than contracts. They also need special kind of care. Travel insurance, for example. Security briefings for personal safety, for examples. Evacuation protocols, for example. Things like that. So once we had all of these protocols in place, it was much easier and the response time was so much better in subsequent crisis situations in Syria and in Palestine. Like I said before, we do very well with operations, right? We know what we want to do, we move, we develop, and we execute. However, translating these operational moves into an executive briefing, into a concise HR strategy is where we are missing the boat a little bit, because that's where HR begins to position itself, not just as a support function responding to a crisis, but as a strategic partner in the crisis, predicting what it is that we need to do and turning urgent action into strategic clarity. So From my perspective, this is how HR works beyond admin. This is what I mean when I say from paperwork to power moves. So do the work, yes, but also translate it into executive strategy, which is what we do. I want to ask the audience, I love asking questions, so I'm going to be asking a lot of questions, and I hope you participate as well. I want to ask the audience, and maybe Yemi, you're ready again with your poll, about what is one strategic decision that HR has influenced in your organization? What is one strategic decision that HR has influenced in your organization? Let's hear from you. Yemi, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm trying to populate it.
Okay. I'll just repeat it. What is one strategic decision that HR has influenced in your organization? You can also unmute and speak if you have already an answer to that.
So it has been launched from my hand. Again, if you want to unmute and speak, please feel free, or if you also prefer to use the chat box directly. Thank you.
No answers coming through yet on the chat. None yet on the...
Comfort, would you like to speak? I see you have unmuted.
Boss, why are you picking on me now? Okay, let me say something. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Comfort.
Okay, so for me, in my space, one decision we have been influenced by the team is on compliance in terms of statutory, regulatory compliance. So having been followed through the trends of litigation all around with the resolution from the NIC, so we've been able to push this issue concerns forward for the employer to be aware and also act as at when due, irrespective of the limiting factors within the business. So having to do compliance in terms of statutory, because when you make those deductions in terms of the contributory reduction, and at the end of the month or the season, you don't remit to the regulators, and then the employee has to be either out of the business or get some legal frontiers to say, oh, my company have not been remitting for me and this and that. At the end of the day, HR, we will say to the employer that we've done our best because we all have all documents, approval, reminders, bring it to fore in the mission, we bring it to the sanction to the employer to know that, okay, these are the penalties that we are the company will be faced and the damage, the reputation that it will bring to the employer brand and the society at large. So I would say 80%, this actually has been managed. That's just for me. I don't know if this helps.
Thank you, Comfort. If I understand your contribution correctly, you are the regulator, right?
The regulator. I'm not the
Yes.
regulator. I
No,
am the
your
HR.
organization is
Yes,
the
yeah.
regulator.
No, my organization is an employer of labor, and then we have employees. We have all these
Okay.
employee regulators, the pension, the payee.
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay.
So what do you think helped to move that decision in the right direction? What do you think? What did HR do to make it
So first and
respond better?
foremost, yes. So with being putting my ears down and in discussion forums like this, where Yemi, I want to give it out to him, where he brings industry experts to come to the fore, just like what you're doing, to sensitize for us as enabler what we need to take as, and every other avenue available as a result of a professional networking, education to self, and of course, to the employer at last.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Comfort, for your contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm looking at the chat and there's nothing from the chat. We'll leave
I
the
think
question.
Akim wants to say something, ma.
Akim, please. Akim, please.
Okay, for me, in my own organization, HR has been part of the business, really. We are not just sitting down and looking at other departments doing the business. We are the business. And how have we done this? There was a time, we discovered that there was a low productivity in the organization. And from our survey, we discovered that employees were not really happy. So what we did
Oh, we lost Akim, I think.
was to speak departments and see how we can jointly do this together. We also speak with the CEO to see how HR can actually come in. And we are able to... Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, the
Hello?
network is a bit patchy for that, Akim. It's a bit patchy,
Okay, can
but
you
I
hear me
think,
now?
yes. Now we hear
Okay.
you. You want to continue?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. We spoke with the CEO to create what we called annual strategic retreats. And in these annual strategic retreats, all the HODs will come to the retreats and we brainstorm together on what we can do for the organization. That was an initiative from the HR department. So in the annual strategic retreat, we will review the previous achievement. We will also set goals for the upcoming year. And HR has been saddled with the responsibility of reviewing the trajectory of these goals quarterly. So all the targets that we set for the year, HR is the custodian of all those targets. Then at every quarter, we call the HOD meetings where our C-levels will also be there, CEO, CFO, our COO, everybody will be there. Then we'll be looking at all those targets. Where are we? And HR has been the one driving these and giving reports on these targets. Through these strategy meetings, a lot of issues are being resolved. And that way, I think for this year, the face of our business has changed. And the organization, we can say we have seen a lot of changes one way or the other, and the business is moving. So that's one way HR has been able to introduce its strategic initiatives to the business. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Akim, for that contribution. That's impact right there. That's impact right there. Like I said before earlier, we have done a better job now, or we are doing a better job now of being part of the business, no longer support function, no longer back office function. So this is a good example from Akim of being embedded in the business, being part of the strategy from the front and leading from there. So that's an excellent example. Thank you so much, Akim, for sharing.
We also have a hand up, Ma. Joyce Godwin, you have the floor, please.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd say one opportunity. I work with an international logistics firm, and previously there was an operation where it felt like the China team and Nigerian team were kind of working independently. There was no synergy. So one strategic initiative was to bring about inclusion. So when we brought that inclusion with the both teams, both Nigeria, China, and other things across countries, one thing we noticed was a boost in morale. We saw that employee engagement shot up, and another thing was there was high productivity. It also affected the business growth positively. Previously, the engagement between the two teams felt very, very laid back. There was no inclusion in it. Felt like they were two separate companies, right? But after that initiative was brought about, many activities that we brought into place started including both teams to work together. Meetings were no longer separate. It was now included. Like we had to adjust timing because of the time zone difference, but it was just surrounded in inclusion, and that helped the business and also helped employee engagement. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Joyce, for that contribution as well. It sounds like music to my ears when I hear inclusive HR. So right on cue, you are talking already about my next slide, where I was going to talk about inclusive leadership and DEI. Is there anybody else who wants to make another contribution? Yemi, no, or that's it?
Not for now, Ma.
Not for now. Okay. So inclusion, I'm sure Joyce knows all about this, so feel free to add in a few words at the end of this slide. And what I wanted to share with you was what inclusive HR looks like in practice and how we embed DI into systems. And then we'll talk a little bit also about gender parity and cultural fluency, whatever that means. Now, so inclusion isn't just about celebrating diversity, counting numbers. It's about embedding equity into how we do what we do, how we hire, how we lead, how we develop, how we hold people accountable. At Cummins, and Cummins is one of the most inclusive organizations that I was very, very privileged to be a part of when I worked there for 5 years. We didn't just talk about inclusion, we built it into the HR infrastructure. So, for example, we embedded DEI into our recruitment pipelines, into our performance reviews, into our leadership development. It wasn't a DEI project. It was a lens through which we executed every HR decision. So for example, interview guides to assess inclusive leadership were also introduced. So inclusive leadership is not just about the intent to be inclusive, it's about our daily behaviors, how we listen to our teams, how we make the decisions, how we delegate. Do we delegate always to the same person or to different people to create some healthy competition? How we create the space for difference in our teams? How we track promotion data to identify any equity gaps that may exist or ensure that the criteria for promotion is inclusive of everyone. For example, the RQ Women and Kike will remember this initiative was introduced because we identified the gender gap in front office business marketing roles and even in the management teams as well. So that was an initiative that was initiated because a gap was identified. We were very deliberate about the metrics that we tracked in order to ensure that we were going in the right direction. So metrics like representation by level, by pay equity, by promotion by gender, what percentage of what gender is getting promoted. What is the makeup of our leadership pipeline? Is there equity in that? And what is the employee feedback telling us? How are they feeling the organization? So gender parity isn't just about counting heads, it's about tracking the trends and then creating a narrative and action from that. It was not only in comments, also in SOS. I've spoken about uh, safeguarding, embedding safeguarding into our systems. Also, we did that as well in SOS from intent. Like I said, inclusive leadership is not just intent. You have to translate this intent into infrastructure. So we don't just say we're a caring organization, and SOS is a caring organization, but we build the infrastructure and the mechanisms to demonstrate just how well we protect our participants and our staff and our partners that we work with, how we safeguard them, how we show that we do care about them, mandatory training on safeguarding, reporting channels to ensure that anybody who feels unsafe is able to report and we are able to address those issues, and the accountability framework in order to address any of these challenges when we do face them. So that's what DEI looks like. Inclusive leadership looks like. Intent, yes, but also structure and accountability and also cultural relevance. Also cultural relevance, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in a little bit more detail. So coming to your own organizations, yeah, it's some people would say easier said than done. Um, I want to ask you, and I said I wanted as much participation as possible. I want to ask you, what are the barriers to inclusion in your organizations? If you are trying to embed DI in your systems, if you are trying to build inclusive leadership, surely you have come up to some barriers. And what are some of these? Share them. Let's name them, because when we name them, then we are able to address them. Does anybody want to speak to that? What are the barriers to inclusion in your organizations? Before we go to start speaking about gender parity and cultural fluency. Any hands up? Anybody in the meeting chat? Let me check. Joyce has a hand up. Yes, Joyce.
Okay, thank you. I think one major barrier is leadership buy-in. That point of where they buy into some changes that includes DI. It's one barrier that I know personally have faced. I don't, with the kind of organization where I work in, where there's the chain of command isn't as much, right? So it's kind of difficult to get someone to buy into some changes. It needs extra work, it needs data, it needs, trying to prove a point and trying to connect it. I think one way I've come to, though I still find it challenging, right, to get the leadership to buy in. But one way I've found that it's easy to get them to buy in is the connecting line to the business. I've noticed that major business owners, they are about the business, they're about the numbers. So how
Yeah.
can we tie this change to how it's going to positively influence the numbers? How is it going to positively influence the business? When you get that connecting tie, I think it from what I've tried, it's easier to get their buy-in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Thank you, Joyce. Yes. Where does it hurt? In the pocket. If you can draw a direct line between the business bottom line and how DI or inclusive leadership is affecting it or not, then you are more likely to get an audience to be able to share that. Priye Akbiri said poor communication. You want to unmute and tell us a little bit more about that, Priye? Oh, that's okay, Priya. We understand. And Stella talks about discrimination in terms of gender, communication, and trainings. Ooh, that's heavy. Discrimination. Stella, you want to tell us a little bit about that? No, Stella is shy. Oh, okay.
Good evening, ma.
Good evening, Stella.
Okay. Just to add a little bit to what I shared on the chat box, I meant to say, in some organizations, you notice that the issue of gender parity, there's this recent, I don't know, but it's new to me. I hear that word, men are also having a kind of gender issues. So like you have some employee groups, created. So in some areas, you find that they may not wish to have that full participation. You just hear, oh, it's a woman thing, oh, it's a man thing. So it's that disparity. You find them in some employee programs that are supposed to be an inclusive program. You still hear that, have that in practice, you see it happening. They wouldn't want to participate. I'm also seeing that in some areas, you notice that is an issue of training. They've not been able to really understood what it's about. So there's enough training that is tailored towards this area. It will also welcome that inclusion in reality. Then I also mentioned about communication. Someone also mentioned it. Where there is poor communication, you find that inclusivity in the workplace may not be fully achieved. Thank you. That's just my suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you, Stella. Yeah, you're absolutely right. This cultural, what I refer to as cultural fluency, where there are still some stereotypes. I don't want to call out one gender or the other, where there are still some stereotypes around what is typically male or typically female, and that is an impediment to inclusion in some of our organizations. And yeah, so there's work to do. There is work to do in that area. In my work, I have seen that gender parity also must be context sensitive, and this is what you speak about, Stella, as well, because sometimes in our African context, what we are advocating for example, more women in leadership, is not necessarily the same kind of advocate that we need in other parts of the world. So there has to be some cultural context. Otherwise, then it becomes exclusion. If I can try and think of some kind of gaps that we have in our world here in Africa, we have gaps in gender diversity in leadership. So more often than not, at the entry level, you have more or less a good number, a good equity at the entry level. Plenty women, if not even more women at the entry level in most of our organizations. But the same level of representation is not present as you move higher up the ladder. So something happens in between, whether is people fall off for a variety of reasons, further study, marriage, other things, or they're just not supported by the organization to achieve their career progressions. And that means that by the time we get 30 years later, we do not find the same level of representation in leadership as when we started off. So that's we're lacking gender diversity in our leadership. Also, there's what people are beginning to talk about now around generational inclusion. Now we have several generations working in our organizations. I led a team where the ages varied from the youngest of 25 to over 60. So that's several generations in there. And some people, the Gen Z specifically, begin to feel not part of the decision making. And besides that, also there is ageism now in the workplace, especially in Africa, where the retirement age in Nigeria, I think, is 60. The retirement age is 60. But I know, because I worked in the bank for 8 years, that banks are beginning to retire their staff at 55. You can take early retirement from the age of 55. So that's a kind of, would I say, exclusion, because people, once they turn 50 and start nearing 55, they begin to feel excluded from the organization. We also know about ethnic and regional representation, or the lack of it. Also, disability exclusion or inclusion, however you want to speak about it. And it goes beyond creating a ramp for people to be able to access the office into, are they really part of the workforce in the real sense of the word? Do they take part in the decision making? So the questions that we have to ask ourselves when we talk about inclusion and parity and safeguarding is who's missing from the room when we are discussing strategy. Whose voice is not being heard? How do we build systems that reflect our full diversity across ethnic groups, across regional representation, across abilities, physical and otherwise? Who's missing? And how can we bring them into the conversations? I use questions a lot for reflection. So I would say that those are some of the questions that we should be asking ourselves. When I speak about cultural fluency, I speak about things like language sensitivity, for instance. Yeah, it's in other parts of the world. When I say language sensitivity, I would speak about people who are multilingual, but not necessarily English not being their first language. So the communication in a second or third language goes differently. In Nigeria, I will speak about maybe language accents. How do our managers who are hiring talent into our organization, how do they react to different accents? In Nigeria, we all know our different accents, right? I don't want to call out any tribe, but we all know all those different accents. And if we are only recruiting people with that sensitivity to the different accents, then we are being exclusive. Also, seniority and hierarchical norms. This is very famous in our world. Gender and religious sensitivity. In many parts of our country, gender roles and religious practices shape the workplace, how people dress, the meeting formats, how we even address each other, sir, ma. It's very unique to us. How in the Middle East where I worked, the days of the week are different. People work from Sunday to Thursday rather than from Monday to Friday. How do we incorporate that in our work week in order to be inclusive? So it's all about being inclusive without leaving anybody out. How do we celebrate our local rituals and local holidays? A lot of holidays are global, Christmas and maybe New Year, things like that. But a lot of holidays are also regional. How do we celebrate those or local, in order that we are inclusive? So yeah, that's what I have to say about gender parity and cultural fluency. I don't know whether anybody wants to add anything to it or has any specific experience to share. In my experience, yeah, there's a hand up. Akim, please.
Okay, well done, ma. I've been listening to this issue of gender parity, and I want to use my own organization as an example. We have DEI policy. We have it as a policy, and it is being measured. We have a particular director that is very, very intentional about that. So year in, year out, he wants to see the especially is particular about female representation. So, but the problem I have, let me just say the challenge I have as the head of HR is that since we have been measuring this, I've been scoring low. And I want to say my sector, the industry I am, actually contribute to this. Most of the time, I give that excuse. We are in the maritime industry, where most of the guys we have labor that work on the vessel. We have onboard labor, we have onshore labor. Most of the time, we see these jobs as jobs that women are not fit to do. Our operation is also 24 hours. You cannot put ladies on board vessel. That is how we view it. 100% right now. I have about 370 labor currently, as I'm talking to you. None of them is a female. Where the only place we can say we have few female is in the office. Our operation, we have males generally, because it is 24 hours work. At times, you see the head of operation coming to work during the night shift. These are some of the things that we consider a married woman will not be able to do. And I want to hire. I'm not hiring solely because I want to just balance gender. I want to hire because of my productivity. So there are some things I want to consider. Who are the people that can actually do my job? These are some of the barriers. So I want to also ask you, as an expert in this area, if there is any advice you can give to me. But this is the challenge I have, and I can say since we have been measuring it, I have not scored anything less than. In fact, if I score 10%, I have tried. So that's the challenge. I just want to say, at times, industry where you find yourself also contribute to how you want to balance the gender. That is my own view. Thank you, ma.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Akim. Before I make an attempt at that, I see two other hands up, so maybe they have an answer for you, Akim. I don't know which hands are up. Comfort? Comfort's hands up.
Yes.
Comfort, you want to respond to Akim?
Yes, I want to respond to Akim and also add to it. So from the sectoral challenges, so I think you should check out your focus from the gender and go through the skill set, the competence. Because recently there have been male-dominated profession where women are being into it. Take for example, in content creation, the creative arts, you see women dominating, and even in the maritime space. I know there are some crew members who are feminine, or they are female in it. So it takes personal and self-development for that female to aspire to be in that space. And also, the second approach will be your understanding of the role, not fixed on the gender, on the person handling the role. Because for instance, my first place of job, of assignment, were male dominated. And by the time I got in there, tables were shaking. I challenged them to say, okay, let me come in, don't pay me for the first month. If after my deliverable, you are not satisfied with 2 weeks within the role, I was in awe of what the MD of the company said. She actually knew what she's coming to do. So it's from there that I broke the chain. So once I go through a CV, I don't look at the job description that is common on the CV these days. You have that in-depth situational interview technique that you bring to fore with your candidate that you're looking to interview. That's one. And two, there are some sectors depending on the sensitivity of the role. For instance, in education, if you're in the kindergarten, the crèche, and early primary, there is no male teachers in those classes of education because of the abuse, the emotional trauma, that there are some concerns. Because take for instance, a man will not be able to change the potty for a kindergarten. So some sectors, when you understand the code of conduct, the governance governing that sector, gender is not. And then again, for you to summarize your deliverables in terms of talent management, you have to give that feedback to the candidate you're selecting. Sorry, we'll keep you in view. When we are transiting to the upper class where your services will be needed, we'll revert to you. Thank you. I don't know if this addressed your question and has answered. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comfort, for bringing that contribution to it. And yes, she mentioned a few things like, one, we do acknowledge that there's some uniqueness in some industries, yes, but my view is that it cannot be throughout all the job roles in the industry. I take the example of Cummins, which was the reason why we started the ACU Women Initiative at some point, because we just were not getting female technicians to join the organization. And so it was a deliberate effort. For example, even during the interview stage, to ensure that we had parity. When I say parity, it means that if we are inviting 10 people, if we are screening down resumes to 10 for first long list before short list, if you like, then it has to be in parity, which meant that the recruiting manager had to put in a lot more effort to finding those CVs. It wasn't enough to say, I cannot find technicians of a female gender, because we will not go to interview stage without those level. That way you give every gender an equal opportunity to come out at the end of the interview. From the example that you have given, Akim, in the maritime space, I don't know whether the reason for not having females or not recruiting females into the roles is physical. I'm trying to imagine. I've never worked in the maritime space before. I'm trying to imagine if it's physical, heavy work, like lifting things, or if it's the idea of hygiene, working offshore, because people in the oil and gas industry work offshore, and you have female engineers who work offshore. Do you have the work environment that will be able to accommodate, when you look at your offshore operations, for instance, will be able to accommodate female in that environment? For example, having separate toilets or living quarters, or I don't know, hygienic conditions, those kind of things that will welcome the other gender into that environment. Those are the questions that you need to ask yourself. If a woman came into this environment, would she feel included? Would she feel inclusive in this environment? And if you answer those questions, I'm sure, and you are more deliberate in going out and finding women, or even advocating, put out an ad saying we're looking for this kind of people, or even train, because we started to do that in Cummins when we were not getting enough female technicians. We took them in at OND level and give them a 2-year training in order to get to the level that we wanted, and that increased the number of technicians that we had in the rungs. I see a hand up. The hand has gone down again. Was it Uncle K? Was your hand up, Uncle K?
Yes, my hand is up.
Okay, please.
Okay, I know well the HR that spoke a short while ago about the peculiarity of his industry, the maritime industry.
Okay,
I
yeah.
have an idea of what he's saying, and I quite understand. Um, and I like to address issue practically
Good.
because there's no gain in trying to lie to ourselves that you sort of achieve some kind of gender parity or DEI inclusion in that kind of space. So I like to look at things practically. Again, it's also not ideal for a woman to work night shifts. In the maritime sector, you work night shift, you work, round the clock, you work on vessels. So I think that I would advise him that in, there's no point chasing a white elephant that you can never meet. So I think I would recommend that he should look at his reports. When doing the DEI report, he could report only those that are in the back end admin office in his DEI report. There's no need to report the full crew, handling the maritime sector. If you do that, there's no way you can achieve a balanced DEI. There's no way. It's not possible. And but for now, maybe in the future, and maybe the feminine gender gets more into it. But for now, there's no way. And even the law doesn't even encourage it because it's illegal for you to be giving a woman overnight duty in the office.
It is?
Sometimes, yes, it's not right. Under the law, it's not right.
Oh,
So,
wow.
um,
Okay.
so I think he should restrict his reports to, covering where there is fair level playing ground and not cover where um, it's not really feasible, so that it will not skew his DI reports and make it appear as if the company is not gender sensitive
Yeah.
and hostile towards the feminine gender. As I
Yeah.
said, I like looking at things practically and address things as they appear. I might be wrong. Please don't come for me, but it's just my suggestion. Thank you,
No.
madam. Thank you, everybody.
No. No, thank you so much, Uncle K. I like this kind of discussion, and nobody will come for you, Uncle
Uncle
K.
K, please, I am coming for you right now. How about the hospitality
Nobody.
industry, the doctors,
I was going to
the...
ask exactly, Comfort. I was going to ask that. Nurses work overnight shifts. So doctors work overnight shifts. We have female doctors, we have female nurses. Like I said, I don't have experience in the maritime, so I would need to understand a little bit more what entails this work that makes it so exclusive to the male gender. I don't know enough to be able to make a pronouncement one way or the other. But one thing that I would say is I would not support, I have to disagree with you, Kay, I would not support skewing the data in order to balance your 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 uh, DI matrix. I would not support that because once you do that, then you remove the problem from the dashboard, and then it never gets the attention that I think it requires in this case. So continue to report it. It's a fact of your industry, as you say, and continue to report it as it is. In all honesty, so that perhaps in the course of the future it will get some more attention. Akim, uh, let's hear from you again before we move on in view of time,
Okay,
because I
thank
saw
you.
your hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I've gained a lot from the conversation, really. But just to mention few things, peculiarities of some sector really, can really be a great challenge. You asked a particular question about if this operation is more physical. Yes, it is, because it's a lifting operation, and we have a lot of men. Not only in my, when I was going through that challenge, I had to survey other organizations like APMT and some other organizations that I know they quite have this type of policy that we also run. And I think we are in the same shoe. It's a sector thing, but we are trying as much as possible to see what we can do. A friend just spoke right now that we should focus on the people in the office. Yes, that's actually what we are doing now. Whenever we want to do recruitment, if we see a role that female can actually occupy, we are actually intentional about it because, as I mentioned, we have a policy and we are measuring it. But that peculiarity of onboard crew is there. And for the fear of also harassment and some other stuff like that, we might not actually want to push female where we have a lot of male gender in the night. So, and some other peculiarities I might not be able to mention here because it's a very sensitive organization. So, and also we have, it's a unionized environment for people that know maritime, how it works very well. It's a unionized environment. So everything is being guided. And if you don't do your things right, if you say you want to do DEI, and at the end of the day, a female gender is pushed into a kind of danger, then your DEI will not speak for you when you come for you. So these are some of the things that we look at. But thank you so much. I've gained a lot from this conversation, and there are some points I will want to implement, to make sure that at least we balance things. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Akim and the Uncle K and Comfort and all the other contributors to that. Okay, so let's move away from the human side of things. We've talked about trust, we've talked about coaching, teamwork, emotional intelligence, gender parity, and let's go into very briefly into data, as we say. So data helps us to see patterns, and sometimes it also helps us to predict outcomes. And if we have good data, we can make decisions and we can serve our people much better. Let me go to the next slide. Let me see. Is the next slide? Mouse is not working. I'm going. Oh, sorry, I think I skipped this. I have to go back to building. Okay, what inclusive HR looks like in practice, embedding DEI, gender parity, and then from there, we talked about how inclusiveness builds high-performing teams. That's the next slide. Sorry. So we'll talk about the data after this slide. So pillars of high performance. So we have done all that we can. We are trying to be inclusive in our leadership style and all of that. We are trying to achieve performance in our teams. How do we do that? I have broken that down into trust and psychological safety, talent, and teamwork, as you can see across generations. So let's start with teams. From your perspective, what makes teams thrive? What is one word that you can use to describe a great team leader? Describe a great team leader in one word. You can just shout out the word or you can answer it on the quiz if Yemi is ready with his quiz. One word that describes a great team leader, or you can just write it in the chat. One word that describes a great team leader. Charisma from Priye. Selflessness from Uncle K. Inspiring from Zippy. Thank you. Empathetic. A lot of qualities in one person. Compassion from Tunde. Visionary. That's a good one, Joyce. Visionary. Exceptional in all things. Jinika. Exceptional. So keep them coming. Empathetic. We see that. I think that's the second time we're seeing empathetic. Yes. So people love empathy. We don't have enough empathy, I think. Transformative, innovative, team oriented. Yeah. So keep those definitions of a great team leader coming. I'm surprised I didn't see anybody mention trustworthy motivator, because I think that trust is the foundation of performance. When people do not feel safe in their work environment, in my view, they do not feel safe to speak up. They do not feel safe to challenge ideas. They do not feel safe to admit that they have made a mistake. Then their performance suffers. And there are more and more words coming up. Motivator, goal getter, team oriented, believable, supportive. Those are all great words and they're all correct. So I think that trust is the foundation of building strong teams. When a leader can be trusted, when people around the leader feel safe to speak up, to challenge, to raise their hands and say, that was my mistake, then performance improves in my view. How do you know? How do you know? How do you know when your environment is full of trust? Write in the chat. How do you know when your environment is trustworthy? How do you know when you can trust your leader? How do you know when you are in a team that permeates trust? How do you know? What happens in those teams where trust has been embedded, is a part of the team? I have a few ideas. People speak up without fear of retaliation. Feedback flows both ways, for example. In the same way as my supervisor gives me feedback, I can also give him feedback. Decisions are transparent, another example. So I understand why the decision is one way, even if I do not agree with it. Vulnerability is modeled. So leaders share their learning moments because we all learn at all levels. Transparent decisions, that's good. Open communication is encouraged. Credit is shared. Some people like to take all the credit, but credit is shared. Successes are celebrated collectively. Collectively. Contributions are acknowledged fairly. Fairly. If somebody has worked independently on a project and had a good outcome, should take all the credit. So contributions are acknowledged fairly. Conflict is constructive. People disagree, but they disagree with respect, not with aggression. Provide a more superior argument, and I will agree with you. That's the essence of a disagreement. Welcome, feedback is welcome, and it's not weaponized. So that's how you know that you are in an environment of trust. I'll 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 recite my example of when I went to work for FCMB in 2007. Yes, 2007. It was my first work experience in Nigeria, and And I was very worried from all the stories that I had heard about toxic work environments. But they were unfounded. They were really, really unfounded. I was pleasantly surprised to walk into a very collegial environment where I was encouraged to do the work that I had to do. So that was um, very inspiring for me. In 2009, we were faced, if everybody remembers the global crisis of 2009, it feels like years ago now, uh, the global crisis. At the time I was working with the stockbroking arm of the business, and we had to let go quite a number of staff, a lot of staff, a lot of staff. I cannot, when I look back now, I cannot imagine how we went through that time. So many envelopes that I gave out during that very, very difficult period. And it's during those times that you build trust in an organization. Trust is not built in the time of happiness and everybody's happy uh, with everything going on. It's during times of uncertainty, is when you have to make tough decisions like who to let go and who to keep and what to change and who reports to who, changing reporting lines and changing roles of people. When things become very uncertain, that's when trust is challenged. And that's when you build trust. Not in the easy moments, but in the difficult moments. I think we made it work because we led with transparency. And if I go back to that FCMB time again, shortly after that in 2012, we had the FCMB merger with Finbank. Again, another wave of uncertainty. People are unsure, are they going to keep their jobs? What's going to happen to my position? Am I going to be promoted or demoted? Am I going to lose my job altogether? Plenty of gossip is rife during those kind of times because of the uncertainty. And that's when you build trust. We didn't have the truth. We communicated early during the 2009 crisis as well as during the merger in 2012. Communicated early. We communicated clearly what we know and what we didn't know. You communicate what you know, or you also communicate what you don't know. And we communicated often. Town halls, timelines, explaining the why behind the decisions. Everybody will not agree with every decision, but everybody will understand why. And we let a lot of people go during those years, but even in redundancy, we offered moral and emotional support. Fair packages. We showed up with empathy. I like the word empathy. Came up more than twice when we were listing the qualities of a leader. Empathy. So that's how you build trust. Thank you for all your contributions. Coming to talent coaching and emotional intelligence, talent is not just about the technical skill, the skilled recruiter, the brilliant performance manager. It's also about emotional intelligence, about adaptability, about the ability to grow. So, as a certified coach myself, I use coaching a lot to unlock potential in my teams, in individuals, and in the team. I think leaders who coach, not just manage, leaders who coach unlock a lot of potential in people. And you build high performing teams when you look beyond the resume. beyond the resume to see what other aspects of individuals they can bring to the table. Is it problem solving? Is it collaboration? Is it resilience? Is it all those soft skills that skyrocket one person's performance to just basic to beyond excellent? In my team, I gave opportunity to 2 people to go into roles when we were having difficulties with recruitment in SOS, to go into roles where they had displayed a certain competence and willingness to expand beyond what they were doing at the time, and it worked out for us. So giving opportunities to employees who show potential is also another way of building high performing teams. And then beyond talent and coaching and unlocking potential, emotional intelligence, I think, is the glue to team performance. Recognizing team dynamics, adapting your communication style to different parts of the teams and different periods of the teams. During peak time, during down times, you communicate differently. Managing conflict. When you have teams, especially cross-cultural teams like I did, there will be disagreements, and emotional intelligence comes into play on how you manage that conflict, how you build the trust with every individual, and how you build the trust with the team. I am very, very proud to say that I think that our teams, or the teams that I have worked with, were not just talented and skilled, but also emotionally intelligent, because they were encouraged to do so. I love working with diverse teams. Diverse teams bring strength. Yeah, you one perspective, 2 perspective is quite narrow. But when you have several perspectives, then the horizon is so wide, and the level of engagement is the breadth of engagement is so wide and so rich, in my view, that I have had such privilege leading large teams. My last team was 10 HR professionals, 7 different nationalities, 5 different geographies. It was daunting in the beginning, I have to say. Age 25, like I said before, to 60. So leading such a team requires adaptive leadership skills, knowing when to be hands-on, support the team, knowing when to step back and watch the team problem solve and arrive at solutions by themselves. So that's what I mean by team working across cultures and across generations has helped me to build strong, high performing teams. It's not automatic. It doesn't happen automatically. It's intentional. It takes inclusive systems. It takes commitment to learning from differences. Acknowledging that your team is made up of different perspectives and everyone's important. Every perspective is important, and bringing it all together with emotional intelligence. So talent needs nurturing, coaching builds capacity, and emotional intelligence holds it all together. And I think that's how we build high performing teams. If everyone agrees. So, I'm going to go from the human aspect of what we have been talking about: trust, emotional intelligence, coaching, building teams, and let's go now to the data that I was about to speak about before. And this is getting to be more and more an interesting part of our work in HR, using analytics to plan decision making. And I've listed there some of the analytical tools. It's not exhaustive. Excel is not there, I see, but that's where to start for most people. We start with Excel, advanced Excel, and Excel is so developed these days, it can really churn out some very, very interesting HR dashboards. And every dashboard is a story. It's a story of people, it's a story of choices, it's a story of leadership. I'm not going to lecture on data today because I know that HR people have come a long way in terms of data, and now we use data quite a lot to tell our stories. I'm going to come at it from a different angle of how we can move from operational data that we use on a daily basis to telling the strategic stories that we need to be telling to demonstrate our part in the strategic decision making of our organizations. So this, for example, is a typical, can everybody see this? This is a typical HR dashboard that we would have produced from any of those, using any of those analytics that I mentioned in the previous slide. This is it's an HR dashboard on hire, on recruitment, good hire, bad hire, by region, by ethnicity, by total of employee count, etc., etc. Right here, there are 4 data points. There are 4 data points here. 2 at the top and the 2 at the bottom. So very briefly, we'll not spend too much time on this. Very briefly, I just want in the chat box, maybe people to tell me what shouts out at them from this data. If we start with the top left, the data on new hire count year on year, what shouts out to us? The data in the top left, new hire count year on year. What shouts out to us? I've lost my, let me see, the chat box. Okay, I found it. Turnover. The data box in the top left. This is the year-on-year hire from the previous year to the current year. That data box is talking about how many people we hired in one year versus how many people we hired in the previous year. What strikes me in that is that there are more people recruited in the subsequent year across the board, from Monday all the way, from the beginning of the year, January, all the way to November. There are more increased hire, exactly, Joyce, increased hire across the board. Increased hire across the board. So that's an easy one. The second one, top right, is new hire by active employee count. New hire by active employee count. Top right. Is it new hire? Yeah, new hire by active employee count. Top right. what I see there is that we're employing least amount of people in the East region and in the West region. In the East region and in the West region, we're employing the least amount of people. And for whatever reason, Group A and Group B, from an ethnic point of view, are the ones that are being highest recruited. Group A and Group B, ethnic group, is the highest recruited. Top right. If we come to the bottom left, we see that, and that is about bad hire by age group as a function of active. And we see that we have the highest number of bad hire in the age group under the age of 30. Not sure what's responsible for that, but that's what the data tells us, that we are the highest number of bad hires is in the age group under the age of 30. And then on the bottom right, the last data point, the bad hires by region and ethnicity. The bad hire is highest in Group A and Group B, and least in Group E, I think. Oops. And least in Group E. Bad hire is highest in Group A and Group B, and least in Group E. So that was just a very short exercise on reading data, interpreting data, and I know that all of us here are very, very adept at doing this. Of course, on the far right, we see an almost equal split on the higher count by gender. Female, male is almost 50-50, which is remarkable depending on what industry this is. We don't know. This is just data that I pulled out from the internet. But this exercise is not about interpreting data. In my view, for the most part, I think a lot of HR professionals, and I'm very, very pleased and happy to say this, a lot of HR professionals have come up to speed with using analytical tools to report data on our processes. And that's huge because this was not the case 20 years ago, for example. So it's fantastic to see that we have awakened to the fact that data is our friend and we can use it to tell our stories. However, for me, where I see the gap is in how we use this data for strategic conversations. And I'll explain what I mean in this slide. How we use this gap for strategic conversations. So here I've tried to capture some of our processes and some of the data that we typically collect in the second column, and then in the last column, the strategic intent and action that will come out of that data that we collect. So if I take the example of the very first one, which is recruitment, so typically we would collect data on gender breakdown, how many female, how many male, how long it's taking us to hire. Is it 30 days or 60 days or 90 days? And where are we hiring from? Schools, universities, open market, things like that. What do we do with this data when we do collect them? How do we report it? Do we just present the numbers to say we have a 50-50 split? We're taking 90 days to recruit, and we're recruiting mostly from secondary schools. for example? Or do we convert that into a strategic narrative whereby we describe what our operational data is telling us, and we formulate a strategic direction as a result of that data, which is what I have written in blue on the third column. So because of the fact that most of our 18% of our roles are women, this signals a gender disparity and prompts us to revisit our job ads, our sourcing channels, and our interview panels in order to build a more inclusive pipeline. I think the action there in blue is the strategic interpretation of the operational data in column 2. And that's what I've done for each of those HR processes. If we go all the way down, for instance, to employee engagement. So we have conducted a survey and we know how many people participated and what they are saying. Now we find out that engagement scores dropped with teams that have new managers. So all the teams that recently had a new manager were engaging less than the rest of the population. And what does that mean? And the strategic direction is that we need to strengthen our onboarding for leaders and embed coaching into their first 90 days. So in terms of action, that translates into a 90-day coaching plan for new leaders, for example. That is strategic more strategic than reporting that our engagement scores are lower in teams with new managers. So, and I've tried to do that across some of our other HR processes, and I'm sure that some of you have even better examples that you can share with me. Anybody wants to share an example of HR process, operational data, strategic action? An example, you have to, I think, unmute to speak. Or if you are able to write it in a sentence or two in the chat, that's good. That works good as well. Okay, so I take it that it's perfectly understood and every HR professional on this call knows exactly what I'm talking about. And there's no need to dwell more on this. So across our value chain, we create these kind of dashboards all the time, these ones that I showed in the previous slide. But what we can do better is translating these numbers, this raw data, into specific actions and strategic narratives that will demonstrate that HR is a strategic partner in the business. In SOS, we use headcount to advocate for safer staffing ratios in child protection roles. Staffing ratios meaning the number of caregivers per participant. We also use program cost per participant to gain insight into efficiencies. We found out that some programs were more efficient in the number on cost, number of caregivers and the cost of staff. So it was more efficient to redirect resources towards those programs. So we use data to drive efficiencies. We use analytics to forecast staffing needs, identify turnover hotspots, some jobs or some locations or some regions or some specific aspects of a role may generate more turnover than others, and that the data can help us to identify these kind of things. I want to find out from you. I said I love asking questions, so here comes another question. Are the analytical tools that you are using providing you with the data that you need to be able to gather these insights? So the Excel, the Power BI, the Oracle, whatever it is that you're using in the work that you're doing, do you get all the data that you want? Is there data missing? Or what data do you wish to have that you currently don't have? Can anybody share? Or we are all fully satisfied with the data that we are currently getting from the tools that we are using? It would appear so. Okay, so that's great. Data empowers. When HR speaks with evidence, we move from a support function to a strategic partner. So that brings us to the heart of our HR. That brings us to the heart of our HR, to our values, to our visions, to the wisdom that we carry from the work that we do. And I wanted to just spend a few moments here to just share some of my experiences navigating a global HR career and give some encouragement for those who are looking for these kinds of opportunities. They exist, they're out there. And what are some of the lessons around resilience, ethics, and adaptability that I have gained from my almost 32 years of work experience. Any questions so far? Any comments so far? Any before I dive into my own lessons from my own journey? No? I'm looking at I've lost my chat box again. So here we go. I found it. Chat box. Okay, so nothing in the chat. So I'll continue. So I'll share a little bit about what I mean by career wisdom and mentorship and how I have navigated. As I said at the beginning, my journey started in Nigeria. I am a graduate of University of Port Harcourt. I grew up in Lagos, in Mushin, so I grew up speaking Yoruba. We didn't have much, but we had values. My mantra is hard work, fairness, and integrity in all that we do. These were not just words for me. These were not just words. This was a code by which I lived. And I continue to live those values to this day. I started as a career counselor in 1990. It's a long time ago. So I was a career counselor for 5 years. When we relocated to the Hague, I tried to restart my career in IT. So I worked a year in IT and eventually I made my way into different industries, as you heard earlier from Yemi in oil and gas, in banking, in manufacturing, in real estate, and lastly, in the NGO, non-profit world. And I worked with some really interesting organizations as well, in Shell, in Cummins, spent 6 months at the criminal court in The Hague. And lastly, I was with SOS. But for me, the most important lesson that I learned through these years did not come from necessarily middle management and senior management and boardrooms. They came from navigating the uncertainty, staying grounded, and lifting others as I climbed, I think. And I'll give a few examples. For example, when I moved to Cameroon in 95, in 85, sorry, when I moved to Cameroon in 85, I had to complete a 2-year postgraduate degree entirely in French. Try doing that. I had to complete a 2-year postgraduate degree entirely in French. At that time, it wasn't just a language barrier. It was a whole mindset shift, I would say. I mean, I ended up learning the language and working the language, but I had to learn under pressure. I had to learn to adapt, learn to persevere, and that language became my passport. In fact, it got me my first international job in The Hague, the fact that I spoke French. So along the way, in the course of your journey, you do pick up some interesting skills that you did not plan out to pick up, and watch out for those, because those are some of the things we do neglect as we embark on our journey. Also, as you grow, the more senior you become, strangely enough, the harder it is to be ethical, and a lot of opportunities to be unethical. And if you don't have those strong values to hold on to, it can be quite a challenge not to lean into unethical ways during recruiting, for example, during promotion, for example, or even during simple things like on a business trip. How do you report your expenses? Things like that. Little things that begin to chip away at your ethical standard. And you very quickly become the person that you may not be. Lastly, the journey was always not linear as well. There were sideways steps. I gained skills in IT. In Cummins, I was in process improvement. Some of my experience in Shell was in expatriate transitions. So again, some of those unexpected skills and competencies that come along the way because you open yourself to adapt to the situations that you find yourself in, and you grow with that. At some point when I was nearing 50, I made a bold but calculated decision to take on a master's program in HR because I identified that the standard was no longer the bachelor's, but now the master's for some international jobs. And I made the decision to go for the master's program. I was almost 50. And I was juggling full-time work, I was juggling family, and I was juggling also self-doubt. Can I do this? Is my brain still able to learn at this level? But that degree sharpened my strategic thinking, I would say, and it opened doors subsequently to the last 2 roles that I held. So growth comes not from comfort, it comes from commitment to a cause, and I think I was committed. So, like I said, it wasn't always linear. I reinvented myself along the way. I learned unexpected new skills in 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 digital skills, in IT, managing data flows. I built audit skills. I'm a very skilled auditor, not certified yet, but I have done a lot of work in auditing. I've built systems thinking, not just in HR, but also in process improvement. In Cummins, I was very actively involved in DEI, which was not my core role. I led some CSR projects. I volunteered to address the customer experience gaps that we were having. I built a customer champion team and was working on a training program for our salespeople before I left Cummins. So all along the way, it has been resilience. It has been staying true to my value of being ethical, adapting to the situations, welcoming unexpected skills that I learned along the way, even when it was not packaged as a promotion. Not every move is a linear upward move, but you learn irrespective from all of them if you just allow yourself to do so. So I have learned to do, I've picked up new languages too. I've embraced digital tools. I have worked across cultures, across countries, I have been privileged, as I said at the beginning. And I encourage those of you who have ambitions towards a global careers to do the same. And yeah, I've walked this path, and I think so can you. And I think that brings me to the end of what I have to share with you today. And I want to hear from you, what are your key takeaways from our session today and final reflections?
Wow, thank you so much. So much wisdom distilled in the last 2 hours, and special wisdom distilled in the last 7 minutes. That's why if you enjoy something, please stay to the end. You know, you may just miss some insights. That's like a webinar. Maybe we'll bring you back and we'll focus on that 5 minutes in the 2-hour session. Because I can guess somebody saying, so how are you coping with family with all of these movements? You know,
Yes,
and very genuine.
a lot of movement.
Yeah, for all stakeholders. Very interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, our facilitator would like to get some feedback, comments around this session. If you like to say anything quickly, easily, I can call out 2 people. Madam Princess Omoba, since you 2 are in the abroad, at least you can speak from the abroad perspective to Madam Joa, who is also in the abroad.
Hey, we should connect.
Good evening, madam, and very well done, ma'am. What can I say? You know, well, some of your stories remind me of my own journey as well, and how I've been able to, because I came from the abroad. I lived in Nigeria, came to the abroad, japada back to Nigeria until I then retired. So my career has taken a lot of curves and turns. I was a diplomat with the UK, you know, and I was posted to a number of countries to serve. So I can identify with a lot of your journey. Unfortunately, I don't speak, I'm not multilingual, but I speak Pidgin English and Yoruba, if that counts for anything.
Does.
And I can also speak Eno, the one we speak in our own language. So, but you know, it's been very, very insightful, very encouraging, particularly for those, you know, that that are coming after us for us to be able to share, life experiences, not just the job, not just the work that we do, but also the life experiences that is woven into that role that we play at different levels and all of that. I, by God's grace, also became a permanent secretary in Lagos State. And so you can imagine what we had to deal with. You are dealing with the staff, you're dealing with the government, you are dealing with the citizens, you're dealing with the country, you're dealing with the state. There's so much. And somehow, with integrity, with the values that we put into it and all of that. I also had champions. I had service charter, service delivery champions. So that's why I said, as you were talking about yourself, it was just reminding me of, okay, So thank you, Ma. I can only say thank you. And like our prof said, you need to come back. And we can even, Prof, maybe it can even be a double presentation where we actually share, life experiences of how we're able to weave our personal lifestyles into the way we're developing, and we've been able to also achieve certain things and milestones in our career journey. It would be nice. It would be nice because a lot of times we just sit and we listen to this story and we just say, oh, they got to this place, they got to that place. But there are certain things that we paid. There are certain ways that, we had to navigate through to get there. There are certain resilience that comes with it. And by the time everybody has a story to tell, I'm also a life coach. And so I know, I fully understand all that you're saying. All I can say is that, Prof, thank you very much for this platform, because every day that I join this webinar, it's always so value adding. I can never thank you enough, Prof. And like I said, I'm always learning. I've learned so much from this one today again. Thank you, Madam Joan, for really giving us your time and sharing this wonderful, experiences with us. God bless you, ma'am. Thank you. I have nothing else to add than just to say thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. It was my first time with the mentorship group, and I'm not leaving. I'm hanging on with all my wit and everything. And now I've found you. I'm not going anywhere. So thank you so much, Yemi. And thank you,
Thank
Kike.
you.
Kike was the first one who reached out to me. And I feel so privileged to have met this group. Thank you. Yemi, you still there?
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's unmute and let's appreciate our facilitator the way we do it best. Thank you so much,
you,
Thank you,
and thank you,
Ma.
Kike
Thank
Lomo,
you
Thank
for
so
you, Madam
much.
Jo. Well,
facilitating the
will be
evening.
It's
thank
a
you,
pleasure
Ma.
to have
So,
you.
Thank you very much, man.
thank you.
Thank you
Network
very
took me out and
Please
back.
don't be a
Thank you
Let's
stranger.
very
just
much.
unmute and
Thank
thank
you.
our facilitator as we say good night and goodbye.
Absolutely.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
For Australia, because you can say, I think we all need to take precautions.